The internet is undoubtedly one of the most impactful inventions of the last century. The ability to access any information, communicate with others across the world, and many other opportunities is simply unmatched in the aspect of technological advancements. Now that we're in so deep, what was life like without it? The 1980s was one of the most important decades for American entertainment. The accessibility of music was at its peak due to countless new inventions, like the Walkman, for example. Not to mention music itself was increasing in quality, with more diverse uses of electronic synthesizers and more advanced sound techniques and many other advancements. On top of that, video games began to explode on an international scale in the mid-80s through the Atari, Sega Genesis, and of course the Nintendo Entertainment System. Mario, and soon after Sonic, suddenly became some of the most iconic characters in the entertainment industry in just a matter of a decade. Meanwhile, the movie industry was also booming in the 80s. More businesses were finally taking a stride into the entertainment industry, resulting in a lot more unique films with higher budgets and less social conventions holding them back. While this all happened, the internet found its way into these advancements, first making its private debut on the 1st of January 1983. This was called Transfer Control Protocol / Internet Work Protocol, which is TCP and IP respectively. Those out there who know how computers function may immediately recognize IP, which essentially is a way to distinguish between computers or devices accessing the internet. An IP is the blueprint for a computer to route and handle packets of data so that they can travel across networks and arrive where the user chooses. January 1st, 1983 would be historically marked as the birth of the internet, because despite the fact that the World Wide Web wouldn't be accessible to the public for another 10 years, this was the first trace of what the future was like. In the 80s, the internet, while being taken seriously by some investors, was not used by many people. You could access the internet through a phone modem in what was still considered a really confusing process to this day, but it still really wasn't used or picked up by many. Not to mention there was still no way to be on the phone and be on the internet at the same time. These two things were mutually exclusive. To put this in perspective, in 1981, there were only around 200 users of the early network CSNet. However, fast forward to 1995, where AOL, also known as America Online, came to the forefront of attention. AOL became an internet company with over 3 million active users in just 1995 and became easily the most popular internet company of the 90s. It originally provided a dial-up service to millions of Americans, and then most notably, completely pioneered instant messaging, skyrocketing its popularity.
My first experience to the internet was AOL back in about 1997. I thought it was going to be a fantastic thing. I saw the potential right away that it was going to change the world.
After adding internet access to a more wide audience in 1993, AOL became mainstream and took over the US. Instant messaging was one of a kind. It had the same purpose as email, but in a much more convenient way.
My first exposure to the internet was way back when it first began, which was around 96, 97, when the internet first came around. It was Yahoo, it was AOL dial-up, and my husband was into it from day one. We actually didn't have much money back then, so we went and rented a computer so that he could get on the computer and get on the internet and see what it was all about.
And in 1998, AOL purchased Netscape for $4.4 billion, an online search engine which helped steer them towards high levels of success. After countless milestones in the 2000s, like internet service providers, Google, YouTube, online video games, and much, much more, the internet became one of the biggest universal advancements in modern history. So in a world where you can talk to anyone, anywhere at any time, access any information, play hundreds of thousands of games, and watch billions of videos, why is there an issue? There's a phenomena best described as in an age of connectivity and constant access to communication, it seems we have all actually created the opposite of what we wanted. People are claustrophobic in all of this connection, constantly worrying about their social media platforms, or about your appearance, or if you texted someone back yet. It creates a level of disconnect from each other. It's also becoming easier to hate people, which we've seen very clearly with cancel culture. Let it be known, cancel culture and the act of canceling someone from being on the internet is much different from holding someone accountable. However, there is still a lot of unnecessary controversy and hate out there that spawns from this internet tendency that is come up in this last few years. There's also hate and extremist groups like neo-Nazis on places like 4chan and other niche social media platforms where a lot of extremists can gather together and discuss really evil and toxic things.
But the reason there's so many gay people now is because it's a chemical warfare operation. I have the government documents where they said they're going to encourage homosexuality with chemicals so that people don't have children. I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
It feels like the internet has become a place where we are so desensitized to each other's presence that it feels easier to be mean and rude.
The future of the internet's kind of up in the air with ChatGPT and AI and deep fakes. It's going to become very easy to trick people into believing things that aren't true. It's really changed our whole lives. I feel like everybody's more disconnected now. Even though they're in touch all the time, there's no personal communication anymore. It all happens online or in an app. It's made us all very isolated, even though we're so connected now.
Comparison of appearance is worse than ever as well, with people photoshopping their appearance. Not to mention the use of lighting and angles making people look deceivingly different from reality has caused so much body dysmorphia among our youth.
There's already a lot of misinformation. I think there's going to be the opportunity for a whole lot more, to where it's very difficult to discern between what is real and what is not. And so I've been kind of trying to think about how we could combat that as a society. I think a big part of what needs to happen is we need to start at a young age and monitor things much more closely. I think some of the negative things that have happened with the internet have happened because we had too much exposure for too young of children too soon. And so even though we're at each other's fingertips all the time, I think the disconnect with people face to face has grown. And so we're going to have to figure out a way to be able to share that kind of massive, platform of sharing information while also knowing who to trust and who you can depend on for the truth.
A very important message for a lot of people to learn from is to remember to use the internet as a tool, not as a necessity. If you know what's damaging your mental health, or you feel as though you don't have enough personal space, you need to learn to take a break or just step away from it entirely.
It's a double-edged sword. We really need to rein in what people are able to do and get away with online.
The internet is an absolutely incredible invention that has already helped so many people reach information and learn from people they may have never met. However, learning to balance your time on the internet and use it as a tool for your own success is the key to living in such a heavily digital age.